most hated woman in Joseon, September 2nd, 1506, the day of the Jungjong coup. As the coup forces seized the palace, Yeonsangun's royal consort Jang Noksu was captured. She was executed by beheading in front of the Gungisi, near what is now the plaza of Seoul City Hall. But what followed the execution was even more shocking. The Yeonsangun Ilgi records it. The crowd surged in and pelted her corpse with roof tiles and stones, crying out, "The lifeblood of the entire nation was squandered right here." The body was buried under tiles and stones, exactly as the annals record it. That single scene tells you who Jang Noksu was, the most hated woman in Joseon. But today, I want to start with a different question. Was she really a wicked woman? Or was she a casualty of her era, a woman who lived at the peak of power and paid for it? We will look only at the facts as recorded in the annals. The name Jang Noksu appears in Korean history inseparably from Yeonsangun. Dozens of dramas and films have been made about her, and yet, not one of them has ever depicted her actual final scene as recorded in the annals, because it is too brutal. Today we look not at the drama, but at the Jang Noksu the annals recorded. The daughter of a slave, a status fixed at birth. Jang Noksu's father was Jang Hanpil, who served as county magistrate of Munui in Chungcheong province. A county magistrate is a local official, but her mother was the problem. Her mother was a concubine of low-born origin. In Joseon's status system, if the mother was a bondperson, the children were bondpersons too. Status passed through the mother, so Jang Noksu was born a slave. Her father's position as magistrate counted for nothing under Joseon law. She lived as a bondperson in the household of Prince Jaean, a fifth-degree relative of King Jungjong. Prince Jaean was a royal with little political presence. In his household as a slave, Jang Noksu's life began. While living as a slave, she married a man who was also a bondperson in the same household. She bore a son. According to the annals, she may have married twice. She was a married woman with a child. This was Jang Noksu before she ever met Yeonsangun, a slave, a wife, a mother. It is hard to imagine a lower starting point under Joseon's status system. Yet in this situation she learned to sing and dance. The annals record that she excelled at both. Why did she learn? The record gives no reason, but the result is clear. Learning to sing and dance became the only exit from her life. Yeonsangun was recruiting entertainers across the country, women called unpyeong, skilled in song and dance. Jang Noksu entered the selection process for the palace entertainers known as unpyeong and heungcheong, and ultimately caught Yeonsangun's eye. In 1502, the Yeonsangun Ilgi records the moment. The king heard of her and was pleased, and had her brought into the palace. From that time on, his affection for her grew daily. Whatever she said he followed, and she was invested as Sukwan. Sukwan was the fourth senior rank of the inner court. She had gone from slave to palace rank in a single leap. There were almost no precedents for this in Joseon's history. One thing is worth noting here. Jang Noksu was around 30 when she entered the palace. A married woman who had borne a child, which was not a young age even by the standards of the time. Yet she caught Yeonsangun's eye. Appearance was not everything. What the annals emphasize is her vocal talent, her youthful face that made her look 16 despite being 30, and her ability to read people, to perceive exactly what Yeonsangun wanted and give it to him. That was a more powerful weapon than beauty. Yeonsangun had surrounded himself with countless women before he ever met Jang Noksu. Hundreds of heungcheong alone. The fact that Jang Noksu received uniquely overwhelming favor means she had something beyond looks. The annals phrase, covert cunning and seductive flattery beyond compare, is a condemnation, but it also means she read Yeonsangun's psychology with precision. The king's woman. Why Yeonsangun fell for her. The Yeonsangun Ilgi left an interesting record about Jang Noksu's appearance. She was not a great beauty. The annals say her face was unremarkable, but past 30 she still looked like a girl of 16, an extraordinarily youthful face. It was not stunning beauty, but that youthful face, her singing and her dancing that were her weapons. So why did Yeonsangun fall for her so completely? The annals don't give a direct answer, but several things can be read from the record. Yeonsangun lost his mother in childhood. Deposed Queen Yun was put to death when Yeonsangun was around 4 years old. He grew up not knowing how his mother had died. The annals and various other records show that Yeonsangun was psychologically unstable. The Yeonsangun Ilgi contains a record that Jang Noksu treated Yeonsangun like a small. Yeonsangun lost his mother in childhood. Deposed Queen Yun was put to death when Yeonsangun was around 4 years old. He grew up not knowing how his mother had died. The annals and various other records show that Yeonsangun was psychologically unstable. The Yeonsangun Ilgi contains a record that Jang Noksu treated Yeonsangun like a small child, pinching him, teasing him. No one was permitted to treat a king that way. Yet Yeonsangun allowed it, and in Jang Noksu's presence alone, he let his guard down. Some researchers interpret this as Yeonsangun seeking in Jang Noksu a substitute mother figure, someone who treated him as a child, someone with whom he could be completely vulnerable. Nothing like that existed anywhere in the palace, and Jang Noksu filled that role. This is a psychological reading, not something the annals state explicitly, but the record strongly supports it. The Yeonsangun Ilgi entry for November 25, 1502. She mocked the king as one handles an infant. She taunted him as one treats a slave. Yet however enraged the king might be, the moment he saw Noksu, he invariably brightened and laughed. And so all rewards and punishments depended entirely on her word. Handled him as an infant is a condemnation by the annals historian. But it also means Yeonsangun could relax in Jang Noksu's presence in a way he could nowhere else. Even a tyrant becomes a child in front of someone. That someone was Jang Noksu. Yeonsangun poured enormous wealth into her. The Yeonsangun Ilgi records. The entire contents of the state treasury were emptied into her house. Gold and silver and precious stones were given without limit. Slaves, fields, and homes were too many to count. The national treasury was flowing into one woman's household. In 1503, the year after her entry into the palace, Jang Noksu was promoted to Jungjong, the third senior rank, from fourth to third rank in a single year. For a woman of slave origin to receive a third-rank palace title within a year is nearly without precedent in all of Joseon's history. The taste of power. Did Jang Noksu really ruin the country? Royal favor became political power. The Yeonsangun Ilgi records specific instances of Jang Noksu's intervention in state affairs. First, advancing her own people. Her brother-in-law, Kim Hyosun, received an appointment in Hamgyong province. Officials objected. A man of no ability had been appointed simply because he was Jang Noksu's brother-in-law. Yeonsangun ignored the objections. The annals record the same cycle repeating. Yeonsangun promotes Kim Hyosun, officials object. Yeonsangun ignores them, promotes him again. Jang Noksu's family connection alone determined his entire official career. In 1506, something even more extraordinary happened. A royal decree was issued elevating Jang Noksu's older brother, Jang Boksu, and his children to commoner status. Yangin. Raising a slave to commoner status was highly unusual in Joseon at the time. The favor of one woman had changed the social standing of her entire family. She became a conduit for bribes. The Yeonsangun Ilgi records for August 1502. The royal relative Prince Namcheon, Jang, fearing he would lose a lawsuit over a slave, bribed Jang Noksu. A member of the royal family was lobbying a royal consort. This happened within just 6 months of Jang Noksu catching Yeonsangun's attention. It shows how rapidly she consolidated power. The demolition of private homes is also recorded. Jang Noksu maintained a private residence outside the palace. To expand it, she had the surrounding homes of ordinary people demolished. The Seongonggam, the office responsible for royal construction, was mobilized. People were driven from their homes. Then there is the Okjiwa incident. In December 1505, a lower-rank entertainer named Okjiwa stepped on Jang Noksu's skirt. An accident. Yeonsangun had Okjiwa beheaded in front of the Gungisi, and her head displayed at the quarters of the palace entertainers. Stepping on a skirt was the stated reason for execution. It speaks plainly to the level of Jang Noksu's power. But there is an important question here. Was all of this because of Jang Noksu? Some contemporary scholars assess that Jang Noksu's accumulation of illicit wealth was not substantially different from what was common practice among the officials of the time. Looking at the Yeonsangun Ilgi, There is no record of her packing the key positions of government with her own people on a large scale. Yeonsangun's tyranny had begun well before Jang Noksu appeared. The Muo Sawa was in 1498. The Gapcha Sawa was in 1504. Jang Noksu entered the palace in 1502. It was Yeonsangun himself who ruined Joseon. Jang Noksu was simply standing next to him. Yet the annals overflow with condemnation of her, and that is also a fact. In the eyes of the officials of the time, Jang Noksu was the author of the country's ruin. That condemnation was recorded directly in the annals and transmitted for 500 years. The direction of the historian's brush determines how history is evaluated. Similar conduct by Yangban male officials was recorded as accepted practice. The same conduct by a woman of slave origin was recorded as the cause of national ruin. Acts that were clearly wrong, like the Ogjiwa execution, did happen, but the final decision was always Yeonsangun's. If Yeonsangun did not command it, nothing happened regardless of what Jang Noksu wanted. In the end, the historian's brush determined Jang Noksu's history, and that history carried forward into the dramas and novels we watch 500 years later. The day of the coup. Jang Noksu's end. Shortly before the coup, a scene is recorded in the Yeonsangun Ilgi. One night Yeonsangun recited poetry and shed a few tears. The women around him secretly laughed among themselves. But Jang Noksu and another consort, Jeonbi, wept quietly, holding back their tears. Yeonsangun stroked their backs and said, "It has been peaceful so long. How could there be a sudden upheaval? Yet if there is, you will not escape it." Yeonsangun was prophesying his own end. If trouble comes, you will not survive. And that prophecy was fulfilled exactly. On the night of September 1st, 1506, the coup was launched by Bak Wonjong, Sung Huyan, and Jungjong. The military seized the palace. Yeonsangun did not resist. He was deposed and exiled to Gyeodong Island in Gangwon. Jang Noksu was captured along with the other consorts. The coup forces declared her the instigator of Yeonsangun's misrule. Execution by beheading was carried out in front of the Gungisi, near what is now Seoul City Hall. It had been 4 years since she first caught Yeonsangun's eye. What followed the execution is recorded vividly in the Yeonsangun Ilgi. The crowd surged in and pelted her body with tiles and stones, crying that the nation's lifeblood had been squandered here. The body was buried under tiles and stones. No drama, no film has ever depicted this scene as the annals record it, because it is too brutal. But that is what the annals recorded as Jang Noksu's end. 4 years from the moment Yeonsangun first noticed her. 4 years from slave to royal consort. Yeonsangun died 2 months later on the island. He was 31 years old. Records indicate he longed for his queen, Lady Sin, in exile. Jang Noksu's name does not appear. Ending. Was she a wicked woman or a victim? Let us go over Jang Noksu's life once more. Born the daughter of a slave, she lived as a slave. She married and bore children. She learned to sing and dance, became a palace entertainer, caught the king's eye, and became his royal consort. For 4 years, she stood at the side of the most powerful man in Joseon. Then on the day of the coup, she was beheaded, and her body was buried under the people's stones. That she abused her power is something the annals prove. She accepted bribes, advanced her family, demolished people's homes. It cannot be said she did nothing wrong, but there is something else to consider. How many ways did a woman of slave birth have to survive in Joseon? How many people, given the king's favor, would have chosen not to use it? The high officials of the time routinely accumulated wealth through corruption and filled positions with their own people. There is no evidence in the annals that Jang Noksu was dramatically worse. If there is one difference, it is this. The annals were written largely from the perspective of Yangban officials and court historians. The sight of a woman born into slavery exercising power on the basis of royal favor was therefore very likely recorded with far harsher condemnation than the similar conduct of officials. Officials' behavior was recorded as practice. Jang Noksu's same behavior was recorded as the cause of national ruin. Was Jang Noksu a wicked woman or a victim? The reason this question resists easy answers is the structure of Joseon itself. Joseon was a society of rigid inherited status. The choices available to a woman born into slavery were extremely few. learning to sing and dance, seeking the king's notice, making maximum use of his favor. All of this may have been simply the struggle to survive within those few choices. At the same time, she did abuse her power and harm others in the process. Jang Noksu was a victim and a perpetrator both. One more thing is worth noting. The records indicate that in exile, Yeonsangun longed for his queen, Lady Sin, not for Jang Noksu. Joseon dramas portray Jang Noksu as Yeonsangun's true love, but the annals do not say that. The person Yeonsangun loved most was his legitimate queen, Lady Sin. Jang Noksu was the person he depended on most. Love and dependency are different things. She was probably both, a victim created by Joseon's status system, and at the same time a person who misused the power she was given. And on the day it all collapsed at once, the people's stones covered her. A woman born a slave became the person closest to the king and fell with him in the end. That was the story Joseon permitted her.